I am Ivan Rodrigues, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to the fourth edition of the Economic Times Consumer Freedom Conclave, brought to you by ET Edge and ET Unwired. This edition of the Economic Times Consumer Freedom Conclave is being organized on the occasion of World No Tobacco Day. Discussions will be around harm reduction products as an alternative to a tobacco-free nation and the laws governing the use of such products. Today's event will feature interactions with thought leaders from across the globe on issues pertaining to consumer freedom and their choices, including but not limited to freedom of choice, a democratic approach to lawmaking, prohibitions offering safer alternatives as a choice, an innovation-driven economy, and much more. With that, we move on to the panel discussion titled Enabling the Shift to Less Harmful Alternatives, Evidence-Based Policy Recommendations. And first, it's my honor and privilege to welcome and introduce the members of the panel. David T. Sweener, JD, Faculty of Law and Center for Health Law, Policy and Ethics, University of Ottawa, Canada. Dr. Kiran Melkote, orthopedic surgeon who's based in Delhi and a member of the Association for Harm Reduction, Education and Research. Dr. K. Madan Gopal, senior consultant health, Niti Aayog, National Institute for Transforming India, and Sharifa Ezat Wanpute, professor of hospital management and health economics, deputy dean relation and wealth creation, Faculty of Medicine, UKM Medical Center, previous head of International Center for Case Mix and Clinical Coding, UKM Medical Center, Malaysia. This panel will be moderated by Reni Simon Khanna, former TV and radio news anchor, media person, voice of the Metros.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for the introductions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you heard, tobacco harm reduction remains a controversial topic in tobacco control. Tobacco causes about 8 million avoidable deaths and is responsible for over 12% of premature deaths globally. In India, tobacco use in various forms decreases life expectancy by 11 years among women and around 12 years in men. Failure to rapidly implement global tobacco control measures is predicted to result in 1 billion tobacco-related deaths in the 21st century. The first World No Tobacco Day was held 34 years ago in 1988. And over these 3 decades, little has changed in terms of mindsets or strategy. Around us, risky health behaviors still run rampant. And this year's theme, Commit to Quit, is complete with a slick toolkit of information, which includes counseling, nicotine replacement, mobile apps, hotlines, and text message support, in the hope that we will achieve what could not have been done so far. So let me begin at home with Dr. Madan Gopal. Harm reduction, sir, is not an alien concept to India and has been successfully used in battling HIV, AIDS, drug addiction, etc. But there is a continued resistance to tobacco harm reduction as a viable strategy in addressing or mitigating tobacco damage to smokers who want to quit but simply cannot. Could you, sir, share some of the steps taken in India to help them transition to less harmful methods of getting nicotine with an eventual goal of tobacco cessation?
We have to take into this account the efforts which have been made in the past. We do have a national health policy which envisages that there has to be 30% reduction in tobacco consumption. Being signatory to the WHO convention, and we do have 2 acts, the COPTA and the Food and Drug Adulteration Act, which usually regulates this tobacco. Apart from that, there are many measures which have been taken by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. which has now we have seen a decrease in public smoking. The kind of thing is visible in the urban spheres. But are we only targeting the smokers or are we targeting the tobacco? Because if you look at the consumption of the tobacco, it is going up. It has gone up, I think around 250 million people would be now consuming tobacco, and the number is going on. Because the availability is rampant. Because if you go to a rural area, in rural area, even the children what's there, and that's the most dangerous trend which is happening, and we have to see that how we prevent that thing. If you do a survey in a high school, you will find that what has happened, they would be having pouches of this tobacco in their pockets. It starts from that 8-9 years children, they are now coming into this fold. And if we talk about the harm reduction, having a substitute for tobacco, for HIV/AIDS program, the number was less. As a result, you could have a substitution therapy, opiate substitution therapy. For what are the substitutes which are available for nicotine? So their number is very limited. Do we have the capacity to have a substitution therapy for all these numbers? The numbers are very high. Apart from that, the available patches and the VAPs which are available, the delivery of nicotine is very high. And we require some scientific evidence saying that regulated delivery of nicotine is available. And the harmful effects of nicotine are now available in the form of the oral cancer is also increasing. I'm not talking about limited to smoking. You see the mental issues are also on the rise, as well as the spurge in the infertility clinics. They can all be indirectly or directly attributed to this tobacco consumption.
Rather grim scenario, Dr. Madan Gopal. I'll move on to David. I've asked you this before, David. As you were listening to Dr. Madan Gopal, were you thinking that India has missed a public health opportunity with the bans that we have on e-cigarettes, ENDS and heated tobacco products, etc.? And how do you think South Asian countries like India can learn from other successful nations, say like Japan, for instance, which has successfully seen a 42% decline in smoking rates in just about 5 years? Is India willing to learn?
You know, we know that countries that have had access to low-risk alternatives have seen much more rapid declines in cigarette smoking. You know, just like people who got access to cleaner needles, you know, saw reductions in the use of dirty needles, or places with safer automobiles saw a reduction in the use of more hazardous automobiles. It's substitution. And Japan, as you say, is a great example. Actually, by the first quarter of this year, cigarette sales are down by 46.5% compared to just 6 years ago. I mean, that's a phenomenal rate of progress. And that's just with one low-risk alternative being widely available without it being actively promoted and without using tax policy and differential advertising, you know, risk proportionate regulation to encourage people to move there. So we get an idea that we could probably have a very, very rapid move to low-risk alternatives if we simply aligned policy in order to try to encourage that to happen. If we just did what we usually do in public health of understanding people's lived experience and empowering them to make better decisions about their own health.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'll move on to Professor Pute. Of late, we've seen many sectors subject blanket bans on various, habits that are in society. And this seems to be rather heavy on ideology, but very light on research. How can consumer rights and policies as a general practice become more rooted in scientific findings and, broadly speaking, become more evidence-based? Professor Pute?
There are a lot of voices from the consumers, but sometimes the voices from the consumers are seen as secondary or basically, unintelligent sometimes. And this really puts consumers in a very bad view. they are always assumed as not enough knowledge, or they don't have enough research backing them up. And this creates a disproportion where there's a lot of findings that has not been revealed or selectively being revealed to the consumers. For me personally, I think the most important thing is for the consumers or the consumers association. There must be very strong consumers association pushing the agenda. And this cannot go on without the support by other societies as well. The government needs to be neutral in this sense, because the government needs to have some leeway for consumers to actually address their issue and to be intelligent enough to address what would be, most suitable for them as well. This should be led by scientific research and evidence-based medicine, which is actually widely available.
Dr. Kiran Melkote, I've been watching you as you were listening to the other speakers, and you've been smiling and nodding your head and listening to them quite intently. And we know that you're quite vocal and active on social media and other fora about the challenges of tobacco control. The end game for tobacco by 2045. This is not a new idea. What do you think should be the pragmatic strategy or approach?
The pragmatic approach would be to learn from past mistakes. We take a few steps back and look at the big picture. What are we trying to achieve? Do we want to save lives? Do we want to make lives better from disease? Or do we just want to eradicate tobacco and nicotine? I think that has to be the real question. What are we doing in public health? Isn't it all about saving lives and bettering lives? So I think if we just look at the concept of tobacco harm reduction, okay, vapes are banned in India, I agree. But we still have other NRTs. These are part of the WHO toolkit. These are actually endorsed by the WHO. So we have nicotine patches, pouches, gums, lozenges. These are available in India. Why can't we subsidize them? If you just look at something which is more dangerous than cigarettes, which is BDs, we have 78 million BD smokers. Nobody looks at them. They're invisible because they're in the social. They're in the lower social strata. So they just become invisible. Their problems become invisible to us. And I think that focus needs to change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melkote. It's back to Ivan Rodrigues now.
With that, we move on to the second panel discussion of the Consumer Freedom Conclave, titled Empowering Community Engagement, Creating Consumer-Friendly Regulatory Frameworks. And it's an honor and privilege to welcome and introduce the members of this esteemed panel. First up, we have Professor Bejon Kumar Mishra, International Consumer Policy Expert, Honorary Professor at the National Law University, Odisha, Cuttack. Next up, we have Professor Dr. Nimesh G. Desai, Senior Consultant in Psychiatry and former Director, IHPAS. Samrat Chaudhary, Director, Association of Vapors India, and past President of International Network of Nicotine Consumer Organizations. We also have Yashaswini Basu, Nyaya's Outreach Lead at Vidhi, and Dr. Farooq Khan, Advocate Partner, Divan Advocates, who will be moderated by Rini Simon Khanna, former TV and radio news anchor, media person, voice of the Metros. Rini, once again, over to you.
Thank you very much once again, Ivan, for all the introductions. As many of you may be aware, in 2007-2008, the government of India launched the National Tobacco Control Program during the 11th five-year plan, with the aim to, one, create awareness about the harmful effects of tobacco consumption, two, reduce the production and supply of tobacco products, three, ensure effective implementation of the provisions under the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act 2003, four, to help people quit using tobacco, and five, to facilitate implementation of strategies for prevention and control of tobacco advocated by the WHO Framework Convention of tobacco control. Dr. Nimesh Desai, if I could start with you, what in your view, sir, are some of the leading challenges that consumers struggling with substance abuse face today in the context of determining whether to quit cold turkey or to find a substitute? Dr. Desai?
The problems, as you asked me, are more attitudinal and systemic. Attitudinal problems leading to systemic blocks. And so, like some of us in the clinical and research practice have learned and accepted pragmatism as compared to idealism, that we need to get across through community and awareness and consumer movement to the policy and program level. That let's not aim for a 6-foot high jump if I cannot make it. Let me do a 3.5 or a 4-foot high jump, And so pragmatism over idealism is possibly the need of the day. There are issues about community movement and consumer movement for harm reduction that's positive and negative both. Sure, as it's well known, consumer empowerment and community awareness can work wonders, can move blocks. The trouble is that the reduction in smoking and other tobacco use across the globe and in this country for whatever it's worth has occurred through the concept of passive risk, like it happened in the HIV sphere.
If I could turn to Professor Bijon Mishra, broadly speaking, sir, are safe alternative products generally plagued by inadequate or ineffective policies?
And in order to bring in healthy competition, you need to bring in regulations to regulate the market so that the market behaves in an ethical manner and the consumers are able to take an informed choice based on credible information created by credible institutions, not by institutions which are being funded for certain vested interest, and they bring out reports like you see, Rini, every second day some report is being churned out. No, we want a robust report based on the fundamentals, based on credible approaches and methodology which are not biased, which are neutral. And the government's duty is and responsibility is to ensure that the constitution of our country is not compromised.
I want to go to Ms. Basu with that. I mean, do you think perhaps policymakers should be evaluating harm reduction strategies from an evidence-based, as Professor Mishra mentioned, from an evidence-based approach rather than the legal approach that is prevalent now?
Absolutely. The easy answer is absolutely yes. And as Professor Mishra rightly pointed out, that there has been a sort of disjuncture between what is there on the ground reality and what is the letter of the law. If we look at the current legislation, it in theory covers almost every aspect of deterrence. A ban on smoking in public spaces, ban on advertising, not selling to minors. But you go to any panwari, you will see a 10-year-old selling you the packet itself. So that exposure is absolutely, in the current context, devoid of the reality.
How can we, Samrat, better sensitize both our lawmakers and consumers and lay public to the benefits of switching to less harmful alternatives?
So we need to, I think, also impress upon policymakers that harm reduction works, and it has worked so significantly in, there has been a long war on drugs. People have been incarcerated, and then they figured, okay, that's not the way. Let's work with drug users. Let's give them options. Let's give them agency. And why not let's do with 1.3 billion people who smoke. So I think, and there's a lot of evidence there. There's a lot of studies. There's a lot of efficacy reports there, which can be shared. I think also policymakers need to realize what's happening in other countries. If you look at UK, US, there has been accelerated decline in smoking in all age groups after introduction of harm reduction strategies. So to show to them that, yes, this works, and and it's worked across the world, why would it not work here? I think also it's important that solutions, THR or harm reduction solutions, we build ground up, so that all stakeholders are a party to it and benefit from it. So I think farmers also need to be looked at.
We'd like to now take on the final thoughts from Dr. Farooq Khan, advocate and partner at Diwan Advocates, who has been working on the legal aspects and on other harmful harmless alternatives and the bans, of course, that were imposed. Dr. Farooq Khan.
The government across the world try to persuade their citizens by different programs, etc., to cease and desist and to refrain from consuming tobacco in any form. Yet the reality is that tobacco in form of cigarette, pan masala, gutka, khani, in its many derivatives is still being sold. It's still being sold under license. It is regulated. The alternate to the combustible and conventional smoking, as we are seeing as it is evident from many research, that it is less, much less harmful than the conventional smoking. Regulated, because at that point of time, even the policy makers and at that stage, all the concerned stakeholders were coming with this thought that it should be regulated, because it should not be left unregulated, because it will lead to a different type of Pandora box. However, the government came up with the ordinance, and ultimately the bill was enacted into act, and that legislation banning import, export, marketing, selling, and everything came into place.
With that, we move on to the keynote address, and it's my pleasure and honor to welcome and introduce Robert Beaglehole, Professor Emeritus of the University of Auckland, and he also chairs ASH, Action for Smoke-Free Aotearoa, and the Lancet NCD Action Group. Robert, over to you.
We need to be careful to ensure that the alternative nicotine products are widely available and promoted. And at the same time, as people are unable to smoke their favorite fully nicotinized cigarettes, that we deal with illicit trade, already beginning to be an issue, if only because cigarettes are so expensive in New Zealand. There's a lucrative market for illicit imports. So we need to control that. We need to make sure that the reduced harm products are supported, promoted, remain cheap, and of course regulated and controlled. So that's the situation in New Zealand. And I'm sort of optimistic. I mean, being in public health for all the years that I've been in public health, I find that optimism helps. But with the tobacco harm reduction tools available, with the government committed to them, I think we can make progress.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Robert Beaglehole with the keynote address. Robert, we wish you, ASH and the Lancet NCD Action Group, the very best going forward. Well, that concludes the 4th edition of the Economic Times Consumer Freedom Conclave, the theme being reframing societal views on harm reduction, a medical and scientific perspective. I do hope you found the discussions around harm reduction products as an alternative to a tobacco-free nation and the laws governing the use of such products useful. On behalf of the Economic Times, this is your host, Ivan Rodrigues, signing off. Have a good day.